The diplomatic dance. Ambassador Elena Reyes stared out the viewport of her shuttle as the massive Imperial station came into view. Celestis Prime, a gleaming monument to the Galactic Empire's power and reach, orbited a gas giant whose swirling azure clouds provided a dramatic backdrop. The station itself was a marvel of engineering, a spinning wheel with spokes extending from a crystalline hub, all surrounded by the Empire's formidable defense fleet. Elena straightened her plain blue diplomatic uniform, consciously avoiding the urge to fidget with her collar. Earth had been part of the galactic community for barely 15 years, an eye blink in interstellar politics, and humanity remained on precarious footing. Their invitation to the Celestial Summit had come as a surprise to everyone, especially the human coalition government. "Ambassador, we're being hailed," her aide, Marcus Chen, reported from the pilot's seat. "They're directing us to docking Bay 47. "Acknowledge and proceed," Elena replied, her voice steady despite the butterflies in her stomach. She activated her neural implant, reviewing the dossiers on each of the 17 alien species expected at the summit. The Empire had ruled for over 3,000 years, binding countless worlds under its governance. Some species, like the insectoid Trizelians, had been early supporters and now held positions of privilege. Others, like the crystalline Vortani, remained reluctant subjects. Earth, as a newcomer, had no established allies or enemies. Yet, as the shuttle glided into the docking bay, Elena's implant pinged with a message from General Harrington back on Earth. "Remember your briefing. Be respectful but firm. Give nothing away. This invitation is suspicious. They're testing us. Do not fail." Elena smiled thinly. The general always had a way with words. "Ambassador, we've docked," Marcus announced. "Imperial protocol officers are waiting outside." Elena nodded, gathering her diplomatic case. "Let's not keep them waiting then." The moment she stepped from the shuttle, Elena knew she was being observed, not just by the two tall, blue-skinned Trizelian officials waiting at the bottom of the ramp, but by countless unseen eyes through the station's surveillance systems. She had expected nothing less. Ambassador Reyes of Earth, one of the Trizelians, clicked through its translator, mandibles twitching with what Elena recognized as distaste. "I am Protocol Officer HFY. You are precisely on schedule. We humans value punctuality," Elena replied with a smile. "Thank you for the invitation to this historic summit." The Trizelian's compound eyes flashed. "Indeed. Your quarters have been prepared in the Outer Ring, Section 17. The preliminary reception begins in 3 standard hours. You will be escorted." Elena nodded, following the officers through gleaming corridors that pulsed with subtle light. Fellow delegates passed by, some humanoid, others utterly alien in form, all casting curious or dismissive glances at the human representative. None offered greetings. Once inside her quarters, modest but comfortable, Marcus activated a signal scrambler. "Clear," he announced after a moment. "Though I'd bet my retirement they have technologies that can bypass our countermeasures." "Of course they do," Elena replied, setting her case down on a sleek table. "That's why we're not going to say anything we wouldn't mind them hearing." The general was right, Marcus said, lowering his voice despite the scrambler. "This invitation is strange. Humanity has nothing the Empire needs, no unique technology, no strategic resources they can't get elsewhere." Elena smiled, unpacking her formal attire for the reception. "That's where you're wrong, Marcus. We have exactly what they fear most, which is unpredictability." The grand reception hall of Celestis Prime lived up to its name. Soaring ceilings arched hundreds of meters overhead, holographic constellations shifting in patterns that reflected the Empire's expansion over millennia. Delegates from across the galaxy clustered in small groups, their translators creating a background hum of conversation. Elena entered alone, having instructed Marcus to mingle separately and gather what intelligence he could. She wore her formal diplomatic uniform, black with blue trim, Earth's insignia displayed prominently on her shoulder. Unlike the elaborate robes and exoskeletons of the other delegates, her attire was starkly minimalist. "Ah, the human representative," came a melodious voice to her right. "A pleasure to finally meet one of your kind in the flesh." Elena turned to find a tall, willowy being with iridescent skin that shifted colors like oil on water. According to her implant, this was Ambassador Lyria of the Illuvian Concord, one of the Empire's oldest member species. "The pleasure is mine, Ambassador Lyria," Elena replied with a small bow. "I admire the Illuvian architectural influences throughout this station." The alien's skin rippled in surprise. "You recognize our designs. Few newcomers study ancient cultural aesthetics. On Earth, we have a saying, 'Know the past to understand the present.'" Elena smiled. The Illuvian harmony of form and function is unmistakable. Within minutes, Elena found herself engaged in conversation with not just Lyria, but two other curious delegates. She spoke little but listened intently, noting the undercurrents of tension when certain topics arose, particularly the Empire's recent military buildup along the Outer Rim. "The threats beyond our borders necessitate stronger defenses," insisted Ambassador Grell, a reptilian Soran whose scales gleamed with embedded technology. "Surely even Earth can understand this basic principle of security." "Of course," Elena nodded. "Though in our experience, disproportionate shows of force often create the very threats they aim to prevent." A hush fell over the small group. Such direct contradiction of imperial policy was rare, especially from a junior species representative. "Your experience spans barely a century of primitive spaceflight," Grell hissed, dismissive. "The Empire has maintained peace for millennia." "Through strength," Elena acknowledged, "and wisdom in knowing when not to use it." Before Grell could respond, a chime sounded throughout the hall. The Imperial High Chancellor, Lord Sandar, was entering, a rare appearance that brought all conversation to a halt. The Trizalian Lord moved with deliberate grace, his ceremonial armor catching the light as he approached the central dais. "Delegates of the Galactic Assembly," his voice resonated through the hall, translator unnecessary as he spoke in High Imperial, the diplomatic language Elena had spent years mastering. "We gather at a pivotal moment in our shared history." His compound eyes swept the room before settling, unnervingly, on Elena. "New species join our community even as ancient threats resurface. The purpose of this summit is to address both opportunities and challenges. Let us begin with introductions from our newest member, the representative from Earth." Elena felt every eye in the hall turn toward her. This was unexpected. Newcomers were traditionally introduced last, not first. It was either a great honor or a calculated trap. She suspected the latter. Without hesitation, Elena stepped forward and ascended the steps to stand beside the imposing Trizalian Chancellor. Standing before the gathered delegates, she made a split-second decision that would alter the course of the summit. "Esteemed delegates," she began, not in High Imperial as expected, but in her native Spanish, allowing the translators to work. "I bring greetings from Earth, not as supplicants seeking admission to your grand empire, but as equals offering partnership." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Beginning with one's native language rather than imperial was traditionally seen as a mild insult. "Humanity has observed your empire from afar for decades before our official contact," she continued, switching smoothly to High Imperial. "We admire much of what you have built, but we also see the fractures beneath the surface. Fractures this summit was convened to address, though few here will speak of them openly." The Chancellor's mandibles clicked in what Elena recognized as surprise or anger. "Ambassador Reyes, this is highly irregular." As is inviting a junior species representative to speak first, Elena replied smoothly, "Since you've granted me this unusual honor, I assumed you desired unusual candor." She turned back to the crowd. "The Empire faces rebellion in the Outer Rim sectors, resource depletion in the core systems, and growing discontent among mid-tier species who provide the labor but receive few benefits. Meanwhile, ancient enemies, the Void Collective, gather beyond your borders, watching for signs of weakness. The hall erupted in shocked whispers. These were matters discussed in closed council sessions, not public forums. "How dare you?" began the Chancellor, but Alina continued, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Earth offers a fresh perspective, unclouded by millennia of political entanglements. We have studied your history, your conflicts, your triumphs. We come not to challenge the Empire, but to help it evolve before crisis forces change upon you." She paused, letting her words sink in. "My species has survived countless self-inflicted disasters through our greatest strength: adaptation. This is what we offer to the Galactic Empire, the wisdom of those who have faced extinction and emerged stronger." Silence gripped the hall. Then, unexpectedly, Ambassador Lyria began to applaud, a human gesture the Illuvian had clearly studied. Others joined, though many delegates remained still, shocked or outraged. Chancellor Xandar's compound eyes fixed on Alina with newfound intensity. "A bold introduction, Ambassador Reyes. Perhaps too bold. We shall see if Earth's actions match its words when the true negotiations begin tomorrow." As Alina descended from the dais, she noted the reactions around the room. Some delegates regarded her with new respect, others with open hostility, but none looked at her with dismissal anymore. Phase 1 complete, she thought. The following morning, Alina entered the central negotiation chamber to find the seating arrangement had been altered overnight. Earth's position, originally at the far edge of the chamber, had been moved closer to the center, still not among the senior species, but no longer relegated to the periphery. A small victory, but telling. "Quite an entrance you made yesterday," murmured Ambassador Kell of the Vorteni, his crystalline form refracting light, as he took the seat beside her. The Chancellor was most displeased. "Yet I note my delegation hasn't been expelled," Alina replied. "Not yet." Kell's facets shifted in what Alina interpreted as amusement. "The day is young." The chamber filled quickly, and Alina observed the subtle politics playing out in the seating arrangements and greeting protocols. Her enhanced vision, courtesy of her neural implant, allowed her to detect pheromone signals among the insectoid species and electrical discharges between the energy-based delegates. Chancellor Xandar called the session to order with a resonating tone from a ceremonial staff. "We begin with the primary agenda item: security protocols for the Outer Rim territories." For the next 3 hours, Alina observed as the discussion unfolded along predictable lines. Core world representatives advocated for increased military presence. Outer Rim delegates argued for greater autonomy. Mid-tier species sought economic concessions in exchange for supporting either position. Alina remained silent, noting how often delegates glanced her way, perhaps expecting another outburst. She gave them nothing, simply observing and taking occasional notes on an antiquated paper notebook, a deliberate choice that both intrigued and confused her counterparts accustomed to advanced data interfaces. Finally, when the debate had cycled through the same arguments multiple times, she raised her hand, a human gesture that had been incorporated into Imperial protocol. "The representative from Earth is recognized," the Chancellor declared, his tone cautious. "Thank you, Chancellor." Alina stood, setting aside her notebook. "I'd listened carefully to all positions presented. Each has merit, yet none addresses the fundamental issue." She activated a holographic display from her sleeve, projecting a map of the Outer Rim. "These territories are not merely security concerns or resource repositories. They are home to 14 distinct species, 12 of which have achieved spaceflight independently. Their grievances stem not from rejection of imperial authority, but from its inconsistent application." With a gesture, she highlighted specific systems. "These mining colonies operate under different safety regulations than identical operations in core systems. These agricultural worlds receive 30% less for their exports than comparable core producers. These defense outposts are staffed primarily by local species, yet commanded exclusively by core species officers." The chamber had gone quiet. Alina continued, "Earth proposes a standardization protocol. equal treatment under imperial law regardless of system location or species origin. Not as a concession to dissidents, but as a fulfillment of the Empire's own founding principles. She projected a new image, ancient text from the Imperial Charter. Your own founders declared, "Justice flows like light from the galactic center to the furthest reaches. Let us honor their vision." Ambassador Grell rose immediately. Pretty words, but the frontier requires different governance than the civilized core. The human fails to understand basic realities of imperial management. On the contrary, Alina replied calmly, "Earth's history is filled with empires that fell precisely because they treated their frontiers as lesser territories rather than equal partners. The Roman Empire, the British Empire, the American hegemony, all made this critical error. Human history is irrelevant here," Grell dismissed. "Is it?" Alina raised an eyebrow. "Or is it simply that humans have compressed into centuries the rise and fall cycles that take other species millennia? We've had dozens of empires rise and collapse on a single planet. We've seen this pattern before." Chancellor Xandar interrupted. "An interesting perspective, Ambassador Reyes. The Imperial Council will consider Earth's standardization proposal alongside other suggestions." As the session moved to the next agenda item, Alina caught the eye of Ambassador Lyria, who inclined her head slightly. A gesture of respect. More significantly, she noticed several Outer Rim delegates conferring quietly, glancing her way with newfound interest. That evening, returning to her quarters, Alina found Marcus waiting with urgent news. "I've decoded some of their secure transmissions," he said without preamble. "This summit is a sham. The Empire has already decided to implement the containment protocol for Earth." "Containment?" Alina frowned. "That's typically reserved for aggressive species deemed threats to galactic stability." "Exactly." Marcus handed her a data crystal. "They consider humanity's rapid technological advancement, and what did they call it? Psychological unpredictability, to be existential dangers. They're planning to quarantine our entire system behind a hyperspace disruption field. We'd be cut off from galactic civilization for centuries." Alina absorbed this information silently, her mind racing through implications and possibilities. "There's more," Marcus continued grimly. "The vote happens tomorrow, disguised as a routine security measure. Most delegates don't even know what they're actually approving." Alina sat down heavily, staring at the data crystal in her hand. "So this entire summit, our invitation, it was just to get our biometric data, study our reactions, and keep us distracted while they prepared our cage." "It seems so," Marcus confirmed. "What do we do?" "Contact Earth. Request emergency extraction." Alina's expression hardened as she rose from her seat, a dangerous smile forming on her lips. "No, Marcus. We do what humans do best when cornered. Fight back." "Better," Alina replied. "We change the rules of the game entirely." The human advantage. Alina Reyes spent the night preparing instead of sleeping. Her quarters transformed into a war room, with Marcus helping her analyze decades of imperial records they'd brought from Earth, patterns of decision-making, historical precedents, and most importantly, the complex web of interspecies relationships that underpin the Empire's power structure. The containment protocol requires a 2/3 majority vote in the Imperial Council, Alina noted, studying the projected holograms. "If we can sway enough delegates." "That's impossible." Marcus shook his head. "We have no leverage, no allies, and less than 12 hours. Alina's smile was thin but determined. "We have the one resource the Empire fears most." "What's that?" "Human ingenuity." She tapped her neural implant, bringing up the personal files of key delegates. "And we're going to use it to turn their trap into our greatest opportunity." Dawn Cycle found Alina not in the negotiation chamber where the vote would take place, but in the station's Grand Arboretum, a massive biodome housing plant species from across the galaxy. She sat quietly on a bench surrounded by luminescent flora, appearing to meditate. When Ambassador Lyria of the Illuvian Concord entered, as Alina's intelligence had predicted she would for her morning ritual, She paused in surprise. Ambassador Reyes, I did not expect company at this early hour. Elena opened her eyes. The gardens reminded me of Earth. I find clarity here. Lyria settled beside her, her iridescent skin shifting through subtle color patterns. You will need clarity today. The Imperial Council convenes for important matters. Yes, Elena nodded. The vote on the containment protocol for Earth. Lyria's colors flickered in shock. How did you learn about a classified security measure? Elena finished. The same way I learned that the Illuvian Concord opposed it in the preliminary committee. The only species to do so. I wanted to thank you for that. Lyria's voice lowered. We remember what it was like to be a young species facing imperial judgment. But my opposition matters little. The vote is predetermined. Is it? Elena turned to face the alien diplomat directly. The Empire presents itself as unified, but we both know that's an illusion. The Trezalian-led faction controls military policy, while the Vortani dominate commerce. The Sorans manage resource allocation, and the Illuvians, your people, are the cultural and historical conscience of the Empire. Elena produced a small device, activating a secure holographic display between them. What would happen if these factions found themselves at odds over fundamental policy? The display showed complex statistical models, centuries of Imperial Council voting patterns analyzed and projected forward. You've been studying us, Lyria observed, her tone unreadable. Thoroughly, Elena confirmed. Just as you've studied humanity and found something worth defending, I'm offering you information that could rebalance power within the Council, information each faction would find valuable, but for different reasons. What do you want in exchange? Lyria asked cautiously. Time, Elena replied. Delay the containment vote by 1 standard day. That's all. Lyria's colors shifted through decision patterns. You realize this could be considered espionage or manipulation of imperial governance. I consider it diplomatic negotiation, Elena countered. Isn't that why we're all here? After a long moment, Lyria inclined her head. I will see what can be done. But Ambassador, be careful. You are playing a dangerous game. That's humanity's specialty, Elena said with a smile. By mid-morning, Elena had held 3 more clandestine meetings with a Vorteni trade minister, a Soran resource coordinator, and most daringly, a mid-level Trezalian military attaché. To each, she offered different pieces of a complex puzzle, carefully calculated to serve their factional interests, while seeding doubt about the true purpose of the containment protocol. When she finally entered the council chamber for the scheduled vote, the atmosphere was noticeably tense. Delegates clustered in unusual groupings. Conversations hushed. Chancellor Xandar's compound eyes fixed on her with unmistakable suspicion as she took her seat. The council will come to order, he announced, mandibles clicking sharply. Before we proceed to scheduled matters, a point of procedure has been raised. Ambassador Lyria of the Illuvian Concord, you have the floor. Lyria rose gracefully. Honored delegates, new information has come to light regarding today's security vote. The Illuvian Concord requests a 1-day postponement for proper review, as is our right under Charter Section 117. Murmurs spread through the chamber. The Chancellor's exoskeleton stiffened visibly. This is highly irregular, he objected. The matter is time-sensitive. Then perhaps the Chancellor can explain the urgency, came the crystalline voice of Vorteni Ambassador Kell, particularly since implementation would disrupt established trade routes worth billions of credits annually. The security concerns are classified, Chancellor Xandar responded sharply. Yet the economic impact analysis was not shared with the Commerce Committee, Kell persisted. Ambassador Grell of the Sorans rose next. The Resource Allocation Bureau has received no impact statement regarding the containment field generators required. Such devices consume rare minerals that are already under strict quotas. Elena watched the debate unfold, saying nothing. The seeds she had planted were germinating faster than expected. The natural suspicion, and bureaucratic territoriality of the various imperial factions doing her work for her. After 30 minutes of increasingly heated exchanges, a procedural vote was called. The postponement passed by a narrow margin. Chancellor Xandar's compound eyes swiveled toward Elena. The council will reconvene tomorrow. In the meantime, perhaps the Earth representative would honor us with a private audience. It wasn't a request. The Chancellor's private chambers reflected his species' preference for open spaces and elevated platforms. Elena was escorted in by armored guards who positioned themselves at the entrance. Ambassador Reyes, Chancellor Xandar began without preamble. You have been busy. Elena met his gaze steadily. I've been doing my job, representing Earth's interests. By sowing discord among imperial factions, by accessing classified information, by manipulating council procedures. The Trizelian's voice carried a dangerous edge. These are not the actions of a species seeking peaceful integration into the galactic community. Integration. Elena raised an eyebrow. Is that what you call the containment protocol? Sealing off an entire civilization from interstellar contact for generations. The Chancellor paused, mandibles clicking slowly. So you know. Of course we know, Elena replied. Just as we know the protocol has been implemented 14 times in imperial history, always against species deemed unpredictable or destabilizing. Always justified as temporary, never actually reversed. She stepped closer to the Chancellor, fearless despite the height difference between them. What I don't understand is why. Earth poses no military threat to the Empire. Our technology is derivative, our resources unremarkable. What do you fear from us? You, the Chancellor said simply. Humans, your species' psychological profile defies predictive modeling. You make irrational choices that somehow yield successful outcomes. You cooperate and compete simultaneously. You hold contradictory beliefs without cognitive distress. You adapt too quickly, innovate too unpredictably. He gestured to a holographic display showing human history, wars, revolutions, technological leaps, cultural shifts, all compressed into an accelerated timeline. What takes other species millennia to experience, you process in centuries or even decades. Your chaotic mental architecture should have led to your extinction. Instead, it has made you uniquely dangerous. Elena studied the display thoughtfully. You've been watching us for some time. Since your first radio transmissions, the Chancellor confirmed, most new species are incorporated gradually, tested over centuries. Yours required special consideration. Containment. Elena nodded. Except your plan has already failed. The Chancellor's compound eyes narrowed. Explain. The vote delay was just the beginning, Elena said calmly. While we've been talking, my aide has been meeting with representatives from 12 mid-tier species, the ones who provide labor, resources, and military service while receiving minimal benefits. The ones stationed along your disputed borders and in those outer rim territories you're so concerned about. She activated her own holographic display, showing a complex network of communications. They'd been sharing notes, comparing treatments, organizing. Some have grievances dating back centuries, but lacked the catalyst to act collectively. Humanity has provided that catalyst. This is sedition, the Chancellor hissed. This is diplomacy, Elena corrected. Unconventional, perhaps, but effective. By this time tomorrow, you'll face a choice. Abandon the containment protocol against Earth, or watch a third of your empire's working population begin coordinated labor actions across 57 key systems. The Chancellor's exoskeleton trembled with barely contained rage. You would destabilize a galactic civilization of trillions over one small planet. Elena's expression hardened. You would imprison a species of billions for the crime of being different. No, Chancellor. I'm simply showing you that humanity cannot be contained. Not by distance, not by technology, not by fear. Our ideas spread. Our methods inspire. Our very presence catalyzes change. She deactivated her display. But it doesn't have to be adversarial. Earth could be your greatest ally in solving the very problems you fear. Adaptation to rapidly changing conditions, mediation between disparate viewpoints, innovation in the face of existential threats. These are human specialties. The chamber fell silent as the Chancellor processed her words, his compound eyes shifting through complex patterns of thought. "You offer cooperation," he said finally, with a knife at our throat. "I offer a choice," Alina corrected. "Continue on your current path of rigidity and control, which your own historical analysis shows leads to eventual collapse, or embrace change on terms you can influence. Humanity joins as partners, not subjects. The Outer Rim receives the reforms I proposed yesterday. The mid-tier species gain representation proportional to their contributions. And if we refuse?" Alina shrugged. "Then tomorrow becomes very interesting for everyone." The reconvened council session the following day was unlike any in recent imperial history. Instead of the containment protocol vote, Chancellor Xandar presented what he called the Adaptive Integration Initiative, a comprehensive reform package that incorporated many of Alina's suggestions while preserving the Empire's fundamental structure. Most delegates were shocked. Some were outraged. A few, those who had been part of Alina's behind-the-scenes negotiations, nodded in satisfied agreement. When the final vote came, the initiative passed with the slimmest possible margin. As delegates filed out of the chamber, many cast curious or wary glances toward Alina. Ambassador Lyria approached, her iridescent skin cycling through patterns of amazement. "In all my centuries," she said quietly, "I have never witnessed such a dramatic reversal of imperial policy. How did you convince the Chancellor?" "I showed him humanity's true value," Alina replied. "Not as subjects to be controlled, but as partners who understand change better than any species in the galaxy." "Some will call this manipulation or coercion," Lyria warned. "Others will call it the beginning of a more equitable empire." Alina smiled. "History will decide which view prevails." As she prepared to return to her shuttle for the journey home, Alina found Chancellor Xandar waiting in the docking bay. "Ambassador Reyes," he acknowledged with formal stiffness. "Your tactics have been noted." "As have yours, Chancellor," she replied evenly. "You realize that many in the imperial hierarchy still consider humanity dangerous." "With good reason," Alina nodded. "We are dangerous to complacency, to stagnation, to systems that serve the few at the expense of the many. These are things that should fear us." The Chancellor's mandibles clicked in what Alina had learned to recognize as reluctant amusement. "Your species' confidence borders on hubris." "Another human specialty," Alina smiled. "Though we've learned the hard way that hubris has its costs." "Indeed." The Chancellor hesitated, then extended a formal data crystal. "The official recognition of Earth as a full council member, effective immediately. The first species to achieve such status without centuries of probationary integration." Alina accepted the crystal with appropriate ceremony. "Earth looks forward to a productive partnership, Chancellor." "As does the Empire," he replied, adding, "though I suspect productive will mean something quite different than we anticipated." As her shuttle departed Celestis Prime, Alina watched the massive Imperial station recede into the distance. Marcus sat beside her, shaking his head in disbelief. "You just rewrote 3,000 years of Imperial policy in less than 3 days, he said. "General Harrington won't believe the report." "The Empire was already changing," Alina replied modestly. "It just needed a push." "A push," Marcus laughed. "You orchestrated a complete political upheaval using nothing but conversations and information." Alina's gaze remained on the viewport, watching stars streak by as they entered hyperspace. "That's humanity's true strength, Marcus. Not our technology or our resources or even our adaptability. It's our understanding of patterns, psychological, social, political. We see connections others miss, possibilities others overlook." She turned to him with a smile that contained equal parts pride and humility. The Empire feared human diplomats would destabilize their carefully ordered galaxy. They were right to worry, but wrong about the outcome. We didn't come to destroy their civilization. We came to save it, Marcus finished, understanding dawning in his eyes. From itself, Elena nodded. The first of many such interventions, I suspect. As Earth came into view hours later, Elena felt a profound satisfaction. The Galactic Empire had intended to contain humanity behind barriers of energy and space. Instead, human ideas were now spreading uncontrollably throughout its systems, catalyzing changes that would reshape civilization across thousands of worlds. It was, she reflected, the most human outcome possible. The Empire had feared humanity's diplomats, and they had been right to do so.